GOP House Speaker Mike Johnson may have sent home members of Congress early to avoid talking about the Epstein Files and to avoid taking action on the Epstein Files. But Congresswoman Becca Balint from Vermont, she always has some thoughts that she wants to share. And if there's anybody that I know that I can count on that's going to give it to us straight, it's going to be Congresswoman Balint. There is definitely a message that has to be conveyed here. There definitely is a message that we have to continue to bring to the American people right now about transparency and accountability. So again, I got the chance to be able to sit down with the Congresswoman to be able to ask her what's going on with the Epstein Files and really what is going on with some of the immigration stuff that is just insane and is impacting every corner of our country. And a friend, I'd like to say, of the Katie Fang News Channel and a friend of mine, Congresswoman Becca Balint from the great state of Vermont, hanging out with us here. I wanted to touch base with you, Congresswoman, because one, I am very jealous that you are back home in Vermont, but two, you always deliver it straight. Straight, no chaser, which I think is a specialty of mine as well. You got to go home a little early to Vermont, courtesy of GOP House Speaker Mike Johnson. And that was because it was very transparent. Republicans did not want to be dealing with the Epstein Files, even though they are not going away. What's your take on this latest with James Comer sending a subpoena to Ghislaine Maxwell, but her list of demands, including getting all of the questions in advance, total immunity to be able to sit down and speak to Congress?
Yeah. So there's so much to unpack here. Let's start with Ghislaine. Let's start there. Okay. This woman has committed horrific crimes. She's been convicted of horrific crimes. That is why she was sentenced to serve time for those horrific crimes. We know that if it weren't for the things that Ghislaine did in the service of Epstein, dozens, perhaps hundreds of girls and young women would not have been abused. Full stop. So I am disgusted by these Republicans and their mouthpieces on social media who are now trying to reframe her as a victim. She is not a victim. She was complicit throughout. And all you have to do is talk to the victims. Can we please center the victims here? What have they said? Who set up the appointments? Who recruited them? It was Ghislaine. Now, does that mean she's responsible for all of it? No, Jeffrey Epstein committed the crimes in terms of the abuse. So it sounds like Ghislaine may have been present for some of that abuse.
And it also sounds like she actually herself abused some of these girls as well.
So there you go. So the thought that they are even entertaining. So you got Trump who publicly is saying, well, I could pardon her. It's within my authority to pardon her. The answer from Trump should be full stop. No, absolutely not. She's committed horrific crimes. The end. So the fact that he is floating this out there to see what people say, right, is a tell. Absolutely. And she is in no position to ask for any demands. None. And the fact that Comer, who, along with his colleagues in the Republican conference, have sort of positioned themselves as the champion of women and girls when they are apologists every day for the commander-in-chief, who is himself an abuser, right? And we have instances of him walking into the Miss Teen USA pageant, into the changing rooms. Like, nothing that is happening right now should surprise us given who he is, given the things that he has said about his own daughter that has made people uncomfortable on interviews that he has given. And so it is beyond shocking that the chair of the Oversight Committee
of all committees
would entertain this. And look, you said it yourself. They ran on this. They rode this issue into elected office. And now you've got folks like Joe Rogan and a few others who are splitting with Trump. But then you have other people like Charlie Kirk, who just a few weeks ago was like, yeah, we got to get to the bottom of it. And now he's like, oh, I trust this administration is giving us the facts. Okay. They're a bunch of sycophants and lackeys who are using these young women, once again, using and abusing these young women. And there's just no shame. That's why I keep saying to people back home, they're like, I do not understand the Republican conference. I said, you have to understand, you can't shame them because there is no shame there that they are willing to examine. They have shame. They have fear. They're driven by, fear of being exposed. But in terms of us shaming into doing the right thing, not going to happen, because we've had the opportunity for them on the floor of the House and in committee, in the Rules Committee, to vote on the releasing, the release of these files. You did have an interesting thing in an oversight subcommittee right before the break, where you had Summer Lee successfully bringing up a bill within committee to get those files released. But then you got Johnson sending us home early because they are not protectors of girls and women. They don't actually care about going after pedophiles. I mean, that's the crass, hard truth of it. They don't.
I'm glad that you're reminding people that are tuning in, Donald Trump was found liable in the E. Jean Carroll case of sexual abuse. He was found liable by a jury of his peers.
That's right.
And the thing about Trump is he's a promises made, promises not kept guy when it comes to this Epstein Files issue. But ironically, promises made during the campaign that he was going to institute and implement Project 2025 policies. He's absolutely kept that promise, which is one of the mind-boggling things, that somebody who was so overtly telling you what he was going to do and has now delivered on that. Why anybody should be surprised by that, who knows? But I do find it to be also a big tell that the Epstein Files has become the fissure point, right? It's a thing that is creating this chasm within MAGA world. And maybe, you know what, maybe it shouldn't be surprising though, Becca, because it is a horrific thing. Yes. Pedophilia and sex trafficking, it should be the thing where you should be drawing a line, which I'm also glad that you say that James Comer should be like, what negotiations?
Exactly.
There are no negotiations. But how does Comer walk that fine line, though, when your Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, flies down to Tallahassee, takes Ghislaine Maxwell out of federal prison, plops her in the U.S. Attorney's office in downtown Tallahassee, and meets with her for more than 9 hours and doesn't tell the American people what she said?
That's right.
After they gave her a limited immunity to speak to.
Right, exactly. And that is the challenge for members of Congress right now. And there are a few people who are meeting the challenge. One being Thomas Massie, right? Who I disagree with on a whole host of things. But you know what? He is a man of principle, and he sticks to them, and he doesn't cave. Unlike members of the Freedom Caucus, who I now call the Deficit Caucus, because that was what they rode into office, was deficit hawks, but they folded like cheap fans every single time, right? And so it is about what you're made of. It is about your character. So Thomas Massie has found a way to say, no, I'm not going to look the other way on this. And so when people wring their hands and say, oh, well, what is it that you want me to do? My constituents are going to go after me. Well, Thomas Massie has figured it out. And so I'm sick of the excuses, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm sick and tired of the excuses when these Republicans say, well, I'm over a barrel. No, if you care about the young women and girls in your district, that is your job, right? That is your job, to look after your constituents, to make sure that you're holding people accountable. Then there is no excuse. And there is, for them, these cracks. So as Democrats, of course, we're going to take advantage of those cracks. We haven't seen cracks from the beginning, right? So if this is the issue, if millions of Americans, and I do believe it's millions of Americans who voted for MAGA, this was their number one issue. It was getting to the bottom of the Epstein Files, finally going after pedophiles. Now, of course, they thought the pedophile ring was, the Democrats. Turns out the call is coming from inside the House. And so actually, you got to see this through now, who has actually been covering for it. But it's kind of like, here's what I liken it to. So I studied in graduate school. I was a history major, and then I studied Native American history in depth. And you can find voices, even when Native Americans were being horribly abused in the Caribbean, you could find contemporary voices from that time saying, this is wrong. What we are doing is absolutely abhorrent. And so when people at that time, when we look back and say, oh, well, this was the common way of looking at things at the time, you can always find those people who are speaking truth to power. And this is a moment for them. And, Comer's been a huge disappointment, like just when I was on the oversight committee. Now I'm on judiciary, but I mean, come on, the Biden crime family, that's all we ever talked about. Hunter Biden, years of investigation, nothing to show for it, nothing. Right. And so this is where I'd like the press in DC to be more robust, is really looking at the fact that the Republican conference is full of mediocrity right now. Right. They talk about DEI, that they want the best, right? They want the best and the brightest, but their own people, you can be as mediocre as you possibly can, and you will continue to be promoted. Comer's a perfect example of this.
The Republican Party is the perfect example of failing upwards. I
Yes.
think failing up. I think, but the gold kind of the key to the kingdom is how much you can kiss Trump's ass, and I think that
And lick his
that can
balls.
only get you so far, though, right? Because then, to your point, there has to be a collision. Well, for most people, there should be a collision of a moral compass or some type of ethical spine that says, I have to draw a line. And you know what? Maybe pedophilia is the day that I actually say, today's the day that pedophilia is the line that I'm going to actually say we cannot cross as a person, not even as a Republican or a Democrat, but as a person. But they're not going to do this. And it's amazing because I cover everything on this channel and on my social media. And I will tell you, Congresswoman, that this Epstein Files thing is top center. I mean, people care, but they also care because the entire Trump campaign was run on a, quote, campaign for transparency. Let's drain the swamp always, right? Let's have transparency when it comes to things.
That's right.
No more hiding of things by Democrats. And yet all Trump is doing is he's saying that the Epstein Files are a hoax and that Biden and Obama could have planted stuff in there. Now this concept of maybe I can give her a pardon. I know I can, but I haven't thought about it. Well, then why are you talking about it? I mean, it's amazing how dumb he thinks that Americans are. But I think Americans are stepping up and saying, we pay attention. Maybe sometimes you don't think we are, but we're paying attention.
Absolutely. And I think it actually goes beyond him believing that his own voters are dumb and that Americans are dumb. I think it has passed over into contempt. The way that he has been talking about them, tweeting about his own supporters, has crossed over to this disgust at them. Like, you are so pathetic that you are continuing to talk about, are we still talking about this? You're a bunch of weaklings, right? And so he gives the tells all the time, right? He has tried a different scandal that he's put out every day, like first it's Obama, then it's Biden.
And today there's a new tariff. I mean, anytime that there's something that's really percolating that's bad for him, he just slaps a new tariff. It's like he wants you to be distracted by the shiny thing that's happening somewhere else.
Exactly. And it's not working, and it's making him more and more frustrated and more dangerous. I think he's going to get more desperate.
Well, and to your point, it's a perfect segue, because one of the things that I do think Americans are paying attention to, and I don't like polls at all, but I pay attention to them for consistency. And one of the things I'm noticing is his approval on immigration is actually not going the way he wants it to be. And that's because it's surpassed draconian. That's not even the adjective for it now. It's just heartless and cruel. It's always been illegal. So there's a gentleman from the Winooski school district in Vermont. His name was Wilmer Chavarria. And Wilmer became a naturalized citizen since 2018 and was visiting his family in Nicaragua when last week he was detained at the Houston airport for more than 5 hours. He was questioned about his marriage, even though he's been married for more than 13 years and with his partner for 15. He was never given access to counsel, never given access to clocks to even know how long he was being detained. He was threatened that he would be losing his job, that he would be reported to the FBI, even after he consented for federal agents to access all of his electronic devices. But when he said no to them accessing databases that were district related, that had to do with his job as the school superintendent, he said no for privacy reasons for students and others, and they lost their mind and they got very angry. But this is just, I want to always amplify these personal stories, yes, Congresswoman, because yes, I want people to see, one, you're not alone, two, there is strength in numbers if more people will speak up about what has happened to them and hopefully take some further action.
Yeah. So look, Wilmer is an extraordinary educational leader. I knew him before this happened. So I was like, my jaw hit the floor when I saw this come across my desk. Look, he is a superintendent of schools in Vermont. You can't even be in a classroom, a teacher, without being fingerprinted, background checks. Like this man has had to be checked out inside and out. We all do when we are working in the public schools, as we should be, right? It would have taken them 2 seconds to Google Winooski School District to see, in fact, he was who he said he was, right? And the other thing that is so disturbing, they lied to him repeatedly about what his rights were as an American citizen. He is an American citizen. He deserves and is entitled to due process and access to his lawyer. And they also got frustrated because he knew his rights, right? And it is dehumanizing Wilmer. It is dehumanizing his husband who was traveling with him. But it is also trapping these CBP agents, these ICE agents, in a system that is also dehumanizing them. And they are becoming vigilantes before our very eyes because they are surrounded by people that are not honoring the rights of Americans. That are, when we have another incident in Vermont where you had migrant justice workers who were pulled over, and what did they do? I don't know if it was CBP or it was ICE, but smashed the windows of the car, right? What are we doing here? We are instilling terror in people, so we stop speaking out, so we stay small, hoping people don't know their rights. And what we've noticed in Vermont is when Vermonters show up for these hearings, when Vermonters show up at the courthouses, when Vermonters show up in support of their community members, we have seen that shining a light on this has caused the legal system, has caused these elements within Border Patrol and ICE to back off. Wow. We have to be witnessing. We have to be we can't just rely on these individuals and their families and their lawyers to make the case. This is about us taking back due process. This is about us taking back the rights guaranteed to us in the Constitution. And obviously, we know that they are trying to use terror. They are trying to use intimidation. But you and I have talked about this. My grandfather was killed in the Holocaust. I know that the more these agents are working in systems, cells of people that are dehumanizing others, you become inured to it. You become, numb to it. And that is another piece that we have to fight in this, because there are some good people who have these jobs. And I actually had a constituent call me. His son works for Border Patrol. And he said the morale is through the basement. They
Wow.
don't trust the people that are leading them. They want to do a good job. They signed up because they want to protect this country, but they don't like what they see happening. And so it's a mess, but we have the power to say no. And I've been asking people when they come to my office, they say, well, what can we do? You know, whether they're leaders of organizations or whether they're just individual Vermonters, I lead with this question: when was the last time you were brave?
Wow.
Simply put, when was the last time you were brave? When did you speak up? When did you show up? When did you say something in a meeting when someone said something inappropriate? Like, we got to work these muscles, Katie, all of us. And I'm working them every day. And I need allies out in my state, in the nation, to also be pushing the boundary around what's brave. And you can't consistently ask people of color and people who are undocumented to be the brave ones every day. We got to show up for them.
I had to write down what you said. When was the last time you were brave? Because it's not a loaded question. It's just really a question of fact. And I also love that you're reminding people, as you do, that we do have a moral obligation to take care of each other. Our country, our community, our society won't work unless we are taking care of each other. And I spoke to one of your colleagues yesterday on Substack, Congressman Greg Landsman. Mm-hmm. And he's from Ohio, and we were talking, and it was actually interesting because at the end of our conversation, I was saying that I wasn't sure if a lot of people knew that he had a master's in theology from Harvard. And I asked him, I said, I wonder because a lot of our faith leaders are not stepping forward to be able to speak up. And I would love to see them speak up more about the injustices that are happening. But he had something really interesting to say. He said, being cruel is not being strong, right? Being strong and tough, that's been co-opted by Trump and the Republicans in a way where it's been perverted. And I said, being tough and being empathetic and kind, those are not mutually exclusive concepts. You can be tough. I am tough, but I like to think that I'm also empathetic and kind. And he said, Congressman Landsman said, Katie, this is what we do as parents. Like when we raise children, it's a tough world out there. You got to have the thick skin. You got to be tough. But what do we also say? We say, but you got to be kind. And if somebody needs help, you have to ask them, do you need help? And can I help you? And it just kind of struck a chord with me, especially with what you just said, which is, bravery can come in different forms, but just that initial step of reaching out and being like, well, what can I do?
Yes.
I think can move mountains for us right now.
It can. And, I love asking this question because I get the most extraordinary answers. And so I'll give you an example. The first time, so I had sort of kicked this around in my head. I love asking open-ended questions of people just because I get a much better conversation. And I often used to start with, just tell me what's bringing you joy. You can interpret it however you will. But so I decided I was going to start asking, when was the last time you were brave? And I asked the nurse who was giving me one of my booster shots. And it was early in the morning. And she said, well, do you have any questions? I said, well, I do have a question. It's not about my health. But if you have a few minutes, I'd love to know your answer. And I said, when was the last time you were brave? And she got this look on her face and she went, oof, you don't know how much I needed to hear that. And I said, tell me more. And she said, well, I got a friend that I took in, she's having a really tough time. And I said she can move in with me. And, I just feel like it's time for her to spread her wings, not sleep on my couch anymore. And she said, she took a beat and I said, so why that face did you give me? She said, because it's been 2 years that she's
Yes, that's a long time. It's time. Rip that Band-Aid off.
And so we unpacked what she was afraid about, what was she scared about. And she said, I love that you asked me the question because I know that I'm braver than I think I am. right? Like, so that's the one reaction I get is people saying, oh, I could be more brave and I have more capacity than I thought. The other reaction I get is when people say, you know, I did do a really brave thing this week, but I didn't see it as bravery.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you about it. And I'm going to tell you now why I think it was brave that I did it. And then I can reflect back and say, yeah, you are brave. You are stepping up in these ways. And I just think it works. It works the muscle, but it also gets us to reframe. And that's a lot of what I try to do is how do I reframe for myself? How do I reframe for my constituents? Because none of us want to feel paralyzed. It feels horrible.
Well, this is why I love spending the time with you. Again, I'm always grateful for your kind of candor and transparency about these issues and frankly, the really blunt way that you want to remind people about what's important, because I think we kind of get lost in that sometimes. So Congresswoman Becca Balint from Vermont, thank you so much, as always, for spending some time with me, and say hello to your dog, Wheelie, for me. I appreciate it.
I will. It's a huge pleasure to talk to you. I love when we get a chance to just talk.
Thank you.
It's really meaningful for me.
Thanks. Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.